Hey, this is Dave with Taboo Customs. This video today, we're going to be working on this 98 TJ here behind me. We are going to be taking a look at repairing the center 3 body mounts on the tub side here. We're going to be taking a look at those and going through the install of a new Taboo Customs kit to repair those 3 body mounts. Okay, so what are we looking at here? These are the body mounts at the center section of the tub, and what can occur here on the tub side is you've got a subframe piece that runs down underneath the tub on each side, just outside of the frame, and that's what the actual body mounts bolt to and hold the tub in place. Now, the body mounts up inside the tub have a lot of structure to them and a captive nut, and tends to hold moisture, mud, sand, salt, whatever you have that is running around on your roads, and then they rust out. Now, in some extreme cases such as this, they will rust out, and this tub was actually sitting down on the frame. None of these body mounts, and I'm trying to hold 2 hands here, none of these body mounts are actually connected to the tub. So on this Jeep, when it came in, the only body mounts that were connected were actually the one in the very rear and the one all the way in the front under the radiator, which does pretty much nothing for the tub. Even the 2 just in front of the fuel tank, they were missing. They just weren't there. They're not connected, so there's only a couple of body mounts, which is not a very safe condition. If you were to get into like a rollover accident with this, chances are probably wouldn't have stayed on the frame. You probably would have came away in 2 pieces. At least your Jeep come away in 2 pieces. Hopefully you stayed in 1, but it definitely was not a good situation. So we're going to be going through and looking at a kit we have developed to fix this. One last thing we wanted to cover on this before we start actually talking about the kit is, if you look at the rust on this section of the Jeep on the tub, it's very localized to the body mounts. Now, the kit that we've developed is designed to work with this situation. If you have a situation where that rust extends a couple inches either that way, or the same thing on the other body mounts, if the rust is much worse than this, then chances are you're going to actually have to go and buy this whole subframe piece, cut it off the bottom of the tub, and replace that whole subframe piece. But as we get into this, you'll kind of see how much these parts cover, and hopefully it'll help you decide whether this kit is right for you or you need to get that whole subframe. All right, so taking a look at the kits, here we have all of the kits just to do the driver's side. Now, we will have our kits available to do a full Jeep driver and passenger side, which would basically be double of what you see here, or you'd be able to buy these kits individually. Now, a couple of these kits are the same, driver or passenger, it doesn't matter, but up here on this front kit, and you've got this front main plate, a plate that goes just in front of that, and then a weld nut that basically is what you're using to bolt your tub back in. This kit here, this kit is driver or passenger side specific, so if you're ordering a front kit, make sure you get the right one for that side. Now, moving on, you've got the center kit here, which has an additional step in it due to the height of the subframe there, and each one of these you're going to get a plate that will basically go down inside that piece, and the nut that will weld inside of it to get our correct spacing for our body mount. Now, I've seen other people that will go and fix these without buying a kit or something like that, and they'll just basically go and weld a plate on there, and that is okay. But as you can see, there's about a 3/8 inch of difference between what would be flat and where it actually is roughly supposed to be. This kit back here, which is a little bit shorter, is the rear kit, and again comes with the plate and the nut so that you can weld them all up. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our kit ready to install, and then we're going to start working on prepping the Jeep. Now, the first thing we'll do is we will weld our weld nuts into the plates. Now, these weld nuts have a boss on one side of them that will help you locate them. What we've done is we've gone and got a long 1/2 inch bolt that we're going to basically use to hold those nuts in place. It will also help to protect the threads as we weld those in. Now, one thing you're going to want to look at is on the front ones here, the nut will go on the same side that this form with the little piece here, little tab going out, will go. If you know, you're not sure of it, you know, go and put it up there and make sure that you get it on the right side. On these pieces, the nuts are going to go on the top because you're going to want them inside the frame whenever we install this. Definitely don't want to weld them on the wrong side because chances are it'll be difficult to get them back off. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this in place. We're going to use our long bolt to keep it straight. We're going to tack each side, and we're going to go ahead and weld each one solid. So the next step then, once we get the nuts welded in place on the plates, is we do need to weld them on the inside of both of our channels here. Now, to get these located, the easiest way I've found is to hold this plate up like this with it up against the side, and then you can look down here and see if this plate is even to the hole. Mark these on each side, and then you can use those marks to line it up roughly in the center. If your alignment is off slightly, it's not going to make a big deal. You're going to align these whenever you get them into the Jeep and use the actual body mounts to help align them. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to weld these solid on the inside as well. Now, if you want, you can also weld the bottom side solid. I would recommend welding these corners solid because there is a pretty sharp corner there, and that would collect a lot of mud and debris in there and cause premature rusting as well. So we're going to let those cool now. And then we're going to go in, clean up all the spatter, especially on the bottoms and on the sides. Same thing on this piece, because we're not going to want any of that spatter to get in the way when we go and we slide that up over that subframe. So the next step will be going on and doing the however many of the rest of those centerpieces that you have to do in a similar manner. So to prep the Jeep, what we're going to need to do is on the sides you're going to be working on, we're going to need to remove all of the body mount bolts. Now for ours, there's already a couple body mount bolts that are missing. We've got a front one that most of the times if you're doing this repair, that nut has spun on the top, so we're going to have to cut the head of that bolt off with a hard wheel. Then at the rear, you're also on this side going to want to remove that body mount that's just in front of the tank. If it's there on this Jeep, they had not put it back in. And then you're also going to want to remove that body mount at the rear. Now, unfortunately, that one is another one that a lot of times likes to either spin or also break off. We do have a kit for that as well, but that won't be covered in this video. That will be in another video, but unfortunately we will have to pull that one out because you're going to want to be able to lift this side of the tub up and get enough access to cut out the material and also to weld in the new plates. Now on the other side, you're going to want to at least loosen the body mounts over there so that you can lift the tub up without putting too much stress on those bolts and whatnot. And you're also, because these two bolts here are essentially not in line with those, on the other side you're also going to want to remove these two rear bolts on the other side so they don't cause any binding. But we do recommend leaving these body mount bolts in the other side just to ensure that you can maintain alignment with the tub. All right, so for cutting these bolts out, because you're probably going to have to cut a couple of them out, the front two here are pretty easy to get to, so you got enough clearance up here to get to the head of this bolt. The last one, you got to be careful not to get into the body mount itself, so you may have to cut at an angle here. You can usually cut these and save the bottom of this body mount if you're going to try to reuse your rubber bushings here. We've got a whole new kit because it's, you know, we were missing a bunch, so we just ordered a whole new kit. We'll actually have that kit on our website as well. If you're looking for a new body mount bushing kit, you can order those with this repair kit as well. So make sure you're wearing all your PPE, because cutting rust out isn't a whole lot of fun. So we've got all of our body mounts loose on this side. We did have to cut the rear one, like I mentioned. The nut spun up in the frame. Then we've got a jack, large block of wood, and we're able to lift the body up on this side so we can get enough clearance so we can get this body mount in and out and make enough clearance so that we can clean up this area, cut some of this rust out, and then start welding our new panels in. We did leave the bolts on the other side, but they're only threaded in 3 or 4 threads just to make sure we don't completely lose our alignment. But as you can see, when we go through this, you'll see that we're going to make sure that everything lines up as we go. So the next step now is we're going to need these 2 bolts up here that hold these fender support. We're also going to need to remove those because this plate will actually go right there, and it's to help tie in this piece more into the outside of the subframe, because a lot of times to the inside of the subframe it can be completely gone, and on this one it's got a pretty big hole in there, but there's still some area up here at the top front that we'll be able to weld. So the next step is we're going to take our body mount, put it in there, our plate, slide it in place, and we're going to take a 1/2 inch bolt. You could use the body mount bolt, I guess. Thread it in there so we know that we've got at least decent alignment, and then we're going to start letting our body back down. We're basically going to allow the body to put most of its weight on the Jeep, and then we're going to go in here and we're going to mark out all of the edges so that we can weld as much as possible in here and get a much weld on that as well. And then also put our plate in here, this front plate, start marking it out too. So we've got all of our edges cleaned up now. So once again, we're going to line it up and lower it down, and now we can get to the point to where we can tack it. One thing to remember when you are trying to get this cleaned up, you can raise this quite a bit, but you're going to have to be careful of things like your brake lines and other items that are connected to the body and to the frame. You don't want to start stretching those out too much, but you do have a few inches there. You can get in there. One thing you might do before you put this up here, I should have mentioned, there's this little tab here. That little tab actually gets bent outward towards the outside of the Jeep. You might pre-bend that just a little bit with it not in the Jeep, Just make sure it doesn't interfere. Be a little bit easier once you get it up there, because you will have to manipulate that with the hammer, and it can be a little bit difficult. All right, so we've got the weight of the tub sitting on it, but not fully sitting on it, enough to make sure we've got it in the correct position. Make sure the bolt is clearing here, and then we can go ahead and start tacking it in. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, tack it all in, and then we'll raise it back up to get it all welded back in where we have a little bit more clearance. Then while we're doing that, we'll have to add our plate here. We'll use our bolts that came out right here to kind of make sure that we've got clearance for those. And then with this, because it is a formed piece in a couple of different ways, it's a little bit odd because the angles are not square at all. You might need to take a hammer some gaps closed as you go around here. It's not too difficult here on the outside, but the inside can be a bit of a pain. What you can do is you can take a pipe, stick it up in there, hit the end of that pipe to kind of push that piece and close that gap. So with that, we'll go ahead and get welding. One thing to remember, we're going to be welding on the Jeep. We did disconnect the battery just to make sure that we don't send a bunch of voltage through the ECU and for some reason fry the ECU, which would be bad news on top of already bad news. All right, so we've got the front one welded in, and I'm going to tell you that the front one is the hardest one. For us and for you, it will be the most difficult. Trying to get around inside of here is a pain, and we've done a few of these, and we're actually, we continuously make improvements to our kits, and we're going to make a couple of changes to this kit moving forward. Just so you know, we're going to add some slots in here. So those forms that are there, if you need to adjust them, it's going to be a little bit easier. However, I'll let you know you're going to have to weld up those slots when you do get it installed, because if this inside one isn't quite making contact with the inside of that subframe, it can be a real pain in the butt to get in place. And maybe we'll just add them to that one for now and go from there. But I don't know, we'll see. I know adding those slots would also help in the forming, because that is not at all square. It's also very difficult to form because you don't really have anything to go off of. So one other thing to remember when you're welding, this is very thin sheet metal, so try to be careful not to burn through and blow through. So you have to turn your welder down, play with your settings a bit, just make sure you get good penetration, but not completely melt through. All right, so the next one we're actually going to move to is going to be the rearmost here in the center. These are quite a bit easier than that front. The biggest thing right now we need to look at is we need to have about 3 inches from the center line of where the bolt is. You need about 3 inches, 2 3/4 to 3 inches of clearance. So we're actually going to go in there, cut this section out, which takes out typically most of the rust. One thing we're going to have to make sure we do as well is, like, this one still has the part of the bolt left up there. We're going to need to get that out as well to make sure we have clearance. And then essentially we'll take our cap, we'll put it up over it, we'll mark out all of our slots, and we'll get ready to weld it in. All right, so the process of cutting out there is a little bit of painfulness, and that is in trying to really cut these sides. Cutting these you can get to pretty easily. We try to get most of what we can out of the way first, and then we'll go up. We always have to put a brand new disc on there to get that extra depth. Go in, cut this out, and then go back there, cut that out pretty close to this flange up here. Essentially, you know, this is really tying in this channel with this channel to reinforce it, and it's a lot thicker than the original, so it's replacing a lot of the strength that we are cutting out here. After this, it's honestly not too bad. What you can do is put your piece up here, roughly make sure that it clears. You may need to take a hammer and tap it up in there. You may also, if you have any pieces left here, need to tap them inwards so they're not keeping it from going up as far as it needs to be. But then we can kind of just put it up here with our bolt, let the body down. And use the weight of the body kind of get it into place. If we hadn't put our block of wood in the wrong place here, it's up against my lip, so the body won't come down as far as I actually wanted it to. Now I gotta fix that. All right, and there we go. It should be down pretty much all the way. Make sure you've got enough clearance in there. If it's not down all the way, you may have to pull it back out. Look at where your clearance is. One thing you can do is make sure you're kind of centered here on our body mount. You can tap it back and forth. You should have a little bit of play. And then go ahead and mark out your slots. And we put a lot of slots in here so you have a lot of options for welding. You can also just weld the ends perhaps, and some of the slots. You can also weld up here. You might avoid like the center. A lot of times the center is pretty well hard to weld just due to rust. And part of the reason why we put so many welds in here is that you may not necessarily be able to get to the inside very easily. So we try to make up for it by having all these welds here on the bottom and in the outside. On the driver's side, the back one especially is a little bit easier to get to because we don't have the muffler in the way, but especially on the passenger side, it can be a real pain. You can get in there to it, but it's pretty difficult. All right, so now similar to the front, we'll go in here, we'll clean up all the areas we want to weld, then we'll let the body back down, realign our bracket, tack it in place, probably weld quite a bit of it, and then raise it up, try to weld some of the inside, and move to the center. So one thing we forgot on the front bracket, and we got too wound up in making a video, is do recommend priming the inside of the bracket before you put it on there. That way you don't start out with a piece that's going to start rusting on the inside. We use a 3M Weld Thru primer. We'll put a link in the description. Works very well. A little pricey, but does work. Also would help if we finish grinding everything else that we were supposed to be grinding. All right, so here's the rear one. Like I said, the center and rear ones go a little bit easier than the front. Now, we won't film the center one, but the center one is pretty much exactly the same as the rear one, except that this rear one can go either way. However, obviously the center one can only go one way. This narrower section needs to go towards the front, because you can see here the floorboard dips down there, so it's a little bit smaller. Just make sure you get that lined up correctly, and you'll be good to go. All right, so that's going to do it for this video. We've got, you know, all of our body mounts here fixed up in the center. We've still got to repair those last two back there now, but we're going to do that in a different video. So if you are interested in this kit, you can visit taboocustoms.com. We'll put a link in the description. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them here on this video, or you can email us at dave@taboocustoms.com and visit our website. You can leave us a message there as well. So thanks for watching, and as always, a like or subscribe is greatly appreciated.